Hello, friends. Welcome to Storycraft. On this channel, you will enjoy world-top stories. Let's view the video, The Gladiator Who Became Emperor. From chains to the arena, the captive's silence. The sun burned mercilessly over the parched plains of Numidia as a chain gang trudged forward, dust rising with each reluctant step. Among the captives was a man whose eyes burned not with defeat, but with a silent fire. His name was Kyle. Born to a tribal chieftain, he had once roamed free under endless skies. Now, shackled and beaten, he was dragged into a world where men died not for land or glory, but for the amusement of Rome. The price of defiance. Kyle had refused to bow when Roman forces invaded his homeland. He had fought until the last of his warriors fell. But Rome admired strength, even in its enemies. Instead of being executed, Kyle was sold. His muscles and scars marked him as a valuable commodity, destined for a different kind of death sentence. The gladiatorial arenas. A new kind of battlefield. The cell was cold and stank of blood and sweat. The walls echoed with screams of broken men. Kyle was thrown among them, slaves, criminals, and war prisoners, all forced into brutal training. The ludus was not a sanctuary, it was a forge. Men were broken here, or remade into living weapons. The doctor, a brutal former champion, wasted no time. "In this place," he growled, "you fight or you rot." Kyle did neither. He endured. He learned the dance of death with sword and shield, studying every opponent, every tactic. In silence, he grew stronger. The blood baptism. The day of his first fight arrived. The crowd in the Colosseum roared like a living beast, thirsty for carnage. Kyle entered the arena, bare-chested, armed with only a gladius and a thin leather shield. Across from him stood a veteran gladiator known as the Bear, a hulking brute with a dozen confirmed kills. The fight was not fair. It was never meant to be. But Kyle moved with a fury born from chains, from lost brothers, from fire. He dodged, ducked, and struck with a feral grace that left even the most hardened spectators breathless. The Bear fell, clutching his throat, as the sands drank deep of his blood. The arena went silent, then exploded into applause. The beast becomes a legend. That day, Kyle was reborn. He was no longer a nameless slave. He was the beast of Numidia, a rising star in the deadliest sport known to man. Whispers began in the corridors of Rome's elite. Who is this savage? Where did he learn to fight like a general? He became a favorite of nobles, a symbol of raw power and rebellion. The crowds didn't just cheer, they chanted his name. But Kyle had a secret. Every victory, every cheer, every dropped enemy, it was part of a plan. Because Kyle did not fight for glory, he fought for revenge. And Rome had no idea what storm it had just unleashed. The roar of Rome. A name etched in blood. Kyle's rise was no accident. With every battle won, his legend grew. In the heart of Rome, his name echoed louder than a senator's speech. The nobles called him Rex Arenae, king of the arena. His face adorned pottery, graffiti, and whispered fantasies of rebellion. But Kyle didn't care for fame. Every drop of blood he spilled was another step toward the heart of the empire that had shackled him. A slave among gods. Invited to the villa of Senator Marcellus, Kyle stood silent as perfumed nobles gawked at him like an exotic animal. Such power in a savage. One lady cooed, her fingers tracing his scarred chest. But Kyle's eyes were fixed, not on the gold, the wine, or the lust, but on the maps, the politics, the names. He memorized everything, every senator, every general, every puppet and every master. In silence, Kyle was learning how to fight a new kind of war. The champion's curse. Victory brought gifts, women, and food fit for kings, but also envy. The seasoned gladiators, once cheered, now watched Kyle. With clenched fists, they whispered of poison, sabotage, of knives in the dark. The doctor, once his tormentor, now respected him, feared him even. "You are no longer one of them," he warned. "You are a threat to everything they built." Kale understood. To survive the arena was one thing. To survive Rome was another. The Emperor's gaze. Word of Kale's triumphs reached Emperor Severus himself. The aging ruler, paranoid and cruel, summoned Kale for a private display. In the imperial gardens, Kale faced off against 5 elite guards, trained killers. The match was meant to humiliate him. Instead, Kale humiliated Rome. He disarmed them all without killing a single man. With every move, he showed restraint, control, and dominance. The emperor applauded, a slow, calculating clap. "You fight like you've already ruled," he said. "Tell me, Gladiator, do you dream beyond the sand?" Kyle met the emperor's gaze, calm and unflinching. "I dream of freedom, my lord," he replied. "Nothing more." A lie wrapped in truth, whispers in marble halls. Behind closed doors, secret voices began to stir. Some saw Kyle as a weapon to be used. Others saw him as a threat that must be erased. A noblewoman named Aurelia, fierce and clever, approached him with a proposal. "You don't belong in chains," she said. "You belong in command." She spoke of unrest among the legions, of generals unhappy with the throne, of provinces ripe for rebellion. Kyle listened. He had conquered the arena. Now, it was time to conquer something greater. The roar that shook the empire. The Colosseum roared. For Kale. But Rome was beginning to tremble. For the first time in generations, the people didn't chant the emperor's name. They chanted for a gladiator, a man from the dirt, a symbol of strength and justice. A storm was coming, and Kale was its thunder. Shadows behind the throne. The empire's cracks. Rome looked golden on the surface, but beneath the marble shimmered decay. Corruption slithered through the Senate. Generals plotted in silence. The provinces burned with rebellion. And amid the chaos, the people looked to Kyle, not as a fighter, but as a savior. The emperor, watching from his throne, felt his grip loosening. What began as entertainment had become a threat to imperial control. Kyle wasn't just winning battles. He was winning hearts. Aurelia's secret war. Aurelia moved like a ghost through the palaces of power. A noblewoman by birth, a revolutionary by heart. She had watched her father executed for speaking against the emperor. Her revenge was slow and precise. Now she had found her weapon, Kyle. She led him through hidden chambers beneath the Senate, showed him parchments detailing tax abuse, assassinations, and bribery at the highest levels. "Rome isn't ruled by the emperor," she whispered. "It's ruled by shadows." And soon, Kale would walk among them. Enemies in silver robes. Not all eyes were blind to Kale's ascent. Senator Vibius, the emperor's ruthless advisor, moved swiftly. "A slave cannot lead Rome," he hissed in court, but fear lingered in his voice. He ordered spies to follow Kale. Assassins were dispatched, silent and cloaked. One night, 3 men crept into Kale's chamber. Only one left alive, and without a tongue. The message was clear. Kale was no longer a pawn. He was a contender. the Brotherhood of the Blade. In the outskirts of Rome, Kyle met with commanders of a silent resistance, disgraced generals, forgotten warriors, former slaves turned rebels. They had waited for a symbol. Now they found a leader. They called themselves the Brotherhood of the Blade. "We will not march under a crown," Kyle declared. "We will march for justice." He trained with them in secret, honing strategy not for sport, but for war. The sands of the Colosseum had taught him survival. Now, Rome would teach him conquest. The Poisoned Cup. Within the imperial court, betrayal came wrapped in silk. The emperor, increasingly paranoid, invited Kyle for a feast. Fine wine flowed, laughter filled the air. But Kyle's instincts were sharp. He noticed the delay in serving his drink, the subtle nod from Vibius to the servant, the faint tremble in the cupbearer's hands. Kyle stood, eyes burning into Vibius. "I do not drink with cowards," he said coldly, tossing the goblet to the floor. The crystal shattered. So did the silence. He walked away untouched, but war had begun without a single sword drawn. The spark in the dark across Rome. Whispers spread like wildfire. Kyle defied the emperor. Kyle cannot be killed. Kyle walks with the gods. The Senate panicked. The people hoped. The throne trembled. And in the hidden depths of the empire, where shadows whispered and blades gleamed, one truth became clear. This gladiator was no longer fighting for freedom. He was preparing to take the throne. Rebellion of the Forgotten. The fire beneath the streets. Beneath the marble avenues of Rome, the slums boiled with rage. The poor, the broken, the abandoned, they had long been ignored by the empire. But now, whispers of Kyle spread like wildfire through the alleys. A man who rose from chains, a warrior who defied emperors, a slave who didn't kneel. The people were no longer afraid. They were ready. The banner of dust and steel. Kyle didn't raise a royal banner. He raised a cloth soaked in the blood of his fallen brothers. The symbol of the rebellion became simple, a broken chain, carried by orphans, painted on walls, tattooed on arms. Soldiers began deserting. Farmers refused to pay taxes. From Gaul to Carthage, the provinces stirred. Rome was no longer feared. It was hated. Legions torn in two, the legions, once Rome's iron spine, split in loyalty. General Aelius, disgusted by the empire's rot, crossed the Rubicon with 8,000 men, declaring for Kyle. Other legions, still loyal to Emperor Severus, prepared for civil war. Roman brother faced Roman brother. Sons of the eagle turned their
swords on each other. The empire was bleeding, and Kyle was its wound and its cure. The fall of the Golden Gate. Kyle's army marched for the first time not as entertainers, but as conquerors.
When they reached the Golden Gate of the capital, no siege engines were needed. The people opened it for him. The guards laid down their weapons. Rome didn't fall in blood. It surrendered in hope. Kyle stood atop the steps of the Senate, not as a barbarian invader, but as a son returning home. The tyrant's last command. Emperor Severus, cornered and trembling in his palace, issued one final command: "Burn the city before I lose it." But his own guards refused. Vibius tried to flee dressed as a priest. Kyle caught him at the temple steps. There were no trials, no speeches, only Kyle's blade. One strike. Justice. A new Rome rises. The Senate begged for mercy. Kyle gave them a choice: serve the people or fall beside your emperor. Many fled. Others bent the knee. Aurelia stood beside Kyle as Rome's new voice. Together, they rewrote the laws, abolished slave arenas, fed the starving, and raised new leaders from the streets. The people chanted not just Kyle's name, They chanted their name. They had taken back their empire. The price of power, but freedom, has a cost. Kale knew enemies still lingered beyond the horizon. Kings who feared his rise, traitors who plotted in silence. He wore no crown. He sat on no throne. Yet every word he spoke moved the world. And though Rome celebrated, Kale never smiled. For he knew the fight for power is easy, but to hold it, that is war eternal. The empire reforged. The throne. Without a crown, Kale refused the golden laurel. He entered the Senate not as a ruler, but as a servant of the people. His chair was made of stone, not ivory. Let Rome's strength rise from humility, he declared. The empire would be reborn, not through tyranny, but through justice. A leader without a crown became more powerful than any emperor. Enemies in silence. Beyond Rome's walls, the world watched with unease. Kings trembled, assassins were sent. Kale's name became legend and threat alike, but each plot failed. His spies moved faster, his generals stood loyal. Fear no longer ruled Rome. Respect did. The Iron Law. Kyle rewrote the laws of the Republic with Aurelia. Gladiators were freed. Senators were elected by the people, not by bloodlines. Land was returned to farmers. The treasury, once fat with stolen gold, was opened to build roads, schools, and homes. Power was no longer hidden behind palace walls. It walked the streets in the hands of the people. A warrior's farewell. Years later, with peace restored and Rome shining once more, Kyle stood before the people one final time. His armor was worn. His sword hung at his side, not in pride, but as a reminder of battles past. I was forged by chains, he said, but I die a free man. He passed into legend not as an emperor, but as something far greater, a gladiator, who changed the world. Legacy in stone and flame. Statues of Kyle rose in every province, not for conquest, but for courage. The arena that once caged him was turned into a sanctuary, and across time, one name echoed louder than kings and Caesars. Kyle, the gladiator who became eternal. Thanks for watching. Subscribe our channel Storycraft for more interesting videos.